All right, guys, so today we're going to talk about TEAC 8C. The TEAC is explain how natural processes such as succession and feedback loops help restore habitats and ecosystems. So basically, succession and feedback loops. Okay, so first up, we're going to talk about succession. Remember that succession is going to be something you probably heard in biology. So we're going to talk about first what can cause that. So generally, a community is in equilibrium. And equilibrium is generally stable and balanced. Disturbances or changes in the environment can throw a community into disequilibrium. And then severe disturbances can cause permanent changes to a community and initiate a predictable series of changes called succession. Okay. And so we have a picture here of a forest fire. That's going to be one type of succession we talk about. All right. So, first off, succession or ecological succession is going to be any natural, gradual changes in the types of species that live in an area. Okay. Our goal for succession, doesn't matter which type it is going to be to create biodiversity. So a lot of different species, different variety of species or organisms. It occurs after a change event, can be what we call primary or secondary. And we're going to talk about what the difference is between those two. Okay. So primary succession is going to begin with what we call bare rock. Okay. No soil is present. Secondary succession starts with soil. So we kind of have this little alliteration going on here to help you remember that secondary succession always starts with soil. The first organisms to grow after an event are going to be what we call pioneer species. You can think about it like the first pioneers. They're the first organism in that area. An example we're going to talk about are called lichens. So that's what our picture is here. They form on this rock, or they accumulate on this rock and actually help form soil. So remember, make sure you have your notes page handy. Anything in red, bold, underline is what you're going to be filling in on your notes handout. So first up, we're going to talk about primary succession. So primary means first. This is our first type of succession. It occurs when there's no traces of an original community, including vegetation and soil. So you can even see that in the picture we have right here. We have bare rock. So an example for primary succession, it's going to occur after a volcanic eruption has happened or after a glacier retreats, scraping up the area's soil. So those are going to be our two major examples, after a volcano or after a glacier retreat, and there's no soil present. We're only starting with rock. Soil forms as lichens kind of accumulate here. Weathering and erosion helps break down that rock. So remember, erosion is basically breaking down. When these lichens die, so they are organic organisms, they actually decompose and they add organic matter to that rock and helps create our soil. Okay, so you can kind of see that timeline here. We start with rock, eventually have lichens helping create soil over time. So make sure you have filled in your notes page. Here's two examples of pioneer species that you might have heard of before. So our first one is going to be lichens here on this rock. And then we also talk about moss, help plants help trap moisture, prevent erosion. So those are two important species. So for primary succession, simple plants like mosses and ferns are going to be growing in that new soil. So these are kind of the first organisms that appear. Okay, when those simple plants die, they're going to add more nutrients to our soil. That soil layer is going to thicken up, and then we're going to have grasses, wildflowers, other plants are going to start taking over. Okay, so that's kind of what that picture is here. So in this area, you're going to have more grasses, really short flowers, before you start seeing these bigger trees in the background. So make sure you take the time to fill in your notes. red, bold, underline words. Okay. Next up, those plants are going to start dying. They're going to add even more nutrients to the soil. Shrubs and trees can survive now, and then we'll eventually see insects, small birds, and mammals that have begun to move into an area. So what was once bare rock now supports a variety of life. And then our other type of succession we're going to talk about is secondary succession. So remember, secondary succession starts with soil. So it occurs when a disturbance dramatically alters a community but does not completely destroy it. It's leaving soil behind. Begins in a place that already has soil. So an example is going to be like after a wildfire or after land has been cleared for logging, for lumber. Okay, we've seen a lot of different wildfires in the past few years. So even though a fire may destroy all of the plant life that's there, it'll come back. And it'll actually come back quicker. Okay, so it occurs significantly faster than primary succession because that soil is already present. It doesn't have to create it, and it's going to have different pioneer species. Okay, so those lichens and moss aren't going to be the first ones there. It's going to have different types of pioneer species depending on where this environment is located. Okay, so you can look at the timeline, see how after it's a short amount of time before those simple plants start showing up, kind of have established this over a shorter amount of time. And those different pioneer species can be weeds or grasses. Okay, so eventually what succession wants to do is reach what we call a climax community. So it's going to be the stable group of plants and animals that is the end result of succession. Okay, so that's kind of like our end product. It can look different for various ecosystems. So grasses are going to be in prairies. There's some habitat, and we'll talk about this more in class too, that not every habitat wants tall trees, okay? So there's coastal prairie habitat or just prairie habitat that ideally is where grasses are found. So it's okay that it's just grasses and not tall trees. We have trees in different forests, and then obviously we also have cacti that will be in deserts, okay? So it depends on the type of ecosystem that you're gonna, depending on the type of ecosystem, is gonna be a different, what we call end result or a climax community. And this is also the point where there's the most biodiversity, our variety in our organisms, and the most species diversity. So make sure you're filling in your bold, underlined red words on your notes handout. And here's kind of a view of succession. So this top area is primary succession, this bottom area is secondary. You can even see how over time, primary takes a lot longer to get started, and it takes a very long time to reach that, what we call end result of a climax community. Secondary succession, because it starts with soil, does not take as long, so it's a little bit quicker over time. And then succession not only happens on land, it can actually happen in water or aquatic habitats. So primary aquatic succession can occur when an area fills with water for the first time. So that's kind of what you see in this first picture here. And then disturbances like floods or excess nutrient runoff. So we talked about different cycles when it happens when excess nutrients are added. They can lead to what we call secondary aquatic succession, and it's kind of filling in this body of water with other plant life, like terrestrial plant life. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about are feedback loops. So these feedback loops help regulate systems, and it can be either internal, so like our body systems, or external, like predator-prey relationships, we're going to talk about. So a feedback loop is an event that is both a cause or input and an effect or output in the same system. Okay, I'm kind of see what that looks like in these examples. So the first one we're going to talk about is a negative feedback loop. So a negative feedback loop results in stabilization of a system. Okay, so for example, your body temperature regulation. So you have right here your if your body's too hot, here's your brain processing that. So you might start sweating or seeking shade, and your body's going to cool down. Okay, so once your body gets cool, you're like, oh man, maybe I'm too cold. Okay, your brain is processing that. You might start shivering, get more clothes, and your body warms up. All right, and it's just like this continuous loop of helping stabilize an environment. And then our other example we're going to look at are predator-prey relationships like wolves and deer. So what happens is that you have a large number of prey, all right, and then this the amount starts going down and our predator population starts increasing. And then once our prey population gets too low, then our predator population also starts getting low. So it's like this continuous loop as well, kind of helping stabilize that habitat or that environment or system, that system. Okay. And then the opposite of this is going to be what we call a positive feedback loop. And it's resulting in a system moving to an extreme. Okay. So our example here is going to be erosion due to clearing of trees and other plants. Okay. So you can kind of think about positive feedback loop as an increase and not really like a positive thing that's happening, okay? Because erosion definitely is not positive. That's actually something that can be harmful to the environment, but the reason it falls into this positive feedback loop is because there's going to be an increase in erosion, okay? So you have these banks that have been cleared because of water, and then as more soil becomes eroded, those plants are actually getting going away, okay? Causing further plant loss, and then eventually you're going to have this a larger ditch, no more plants, and that's because it's been moving to an extreme. So that's why it's going to be a positive feedback loop. Okay, and then you can also think of if we go back to our negative feedback loop, as like a decrease in something. So you're kind of decreasing um, just what's going on in your body or in that system. Okay. So positive, moving to an extreme. Negative, you're trying to help stabilize it. All right. So make sure you've filled in all of your notes. I believe that's it. And I'll see you at the next unit.